Jake Thompson stood silently amidst the vast land he had just purchased, feeling the gentle breeze carrying the fragrance of wildflowers, as if nature were greeting him after months clouded by the smoke of war. Each step on this ground seemed to lead him back to simple memories of a time not far removed when everything felt within reach and devoid of the burdens of pain. Life here was unlike the desolate battlefields that had haunted him for so long. Here, there were no sounds of gunfire or rain of bombs, only the delicate music of birds swaying about singing songs of freedom. Yet, in the midst of enjoying a peaceful morning in the sunlit garden, Jake realized that the simple life he had always dreamed of might be under threat. An unexpected letter from the Homeowners Association HOA had appeared in his mailbox like a sudden storm on a clear day. The unreasonable rules and regulations which Jake believed exceeded the necessary limits of a community were presented as an unspoken indictment of how he had chosen to build his life. You are required to change the design of your fence and reorganize your garden tools, the letter clearly stated, but hidden behind those words was an undeniable feeling that his privacy was being disregarded. This sensation stirred within him, a man who had endured countless relentless conflicts refusing to sit still. He was accustomed to overcoming unfair penalties, and now faced regulations whose origins he did not even know. An avalanche of warning letters from the HOA fell upon his mind like heavy hammers, leaving him bewildered. Like a veteran returning from the storm, he could not let matters slide easily. He felt a compelling need to fiercely protect what was his, the life he had painstakingly built. Gradually, the presence of the HOA became glaringly apparent and intense, like a brewing storm ready to drown everything in custom and pressure. Memories of his comrades on the battlefield shone in his mind like a flickering light, fueling his determination not to lose his right to live in peace any longer, like a soldier executing a campaign. Jake began to gather information about the HOA. He researched residents' rights, how the HOA operated, and the regulations he might challenge. Loneliness seemed to envelop Jake as he realized he could not fight alone. He needed support and solidarity from his community. Drawing on his experience from past battles, he decided to organize small meetings with his neighbors to share the information he had gathered. The goal was not just to find a way to cope with the HOA, but also to reconnect with those living around him. People who also cherished this land. He knew that the worries of each person were like individual puzzle pieces needing to be assembled into a larger picture. However, what no one could have imagined was the escalating pressure from the HOA. The continuous stream of threatening letters sent not only Jake, but also his neighbors, into a state of unease. Tension mounted as they began to question the necessity of complying with such strict oversight. But instead of giving up, Jake chose a bolder path. He understood he could not simply sit in silence enduring. He needed to transform fear into strength. The peaceful life he had envisioned had now turned into a battleground. But unlike the memories of the battlefield, this conflict was not just between individuals and an organization, but also a clash of values concerning human rights and freedom. Jake resolved not to stop until every decision impacting him and his neighbors was weighed against the scales of justice. He planned a public meeting where everyone could voice their opinions, so that no one would feel isolated in the face of a powerful organization. From rainy days to the final warm sunshine, every moment passed, carried with it the strength of resilience. Jake knew he was not just fighting for himself, but also for a community bound by regulations they had never agreed to. Ultimately, he stood in the middle of his garden, flowers blooming beneath the sun, reminding himself that every battle has its reason, and every reason deserves protection. This land was not merely a place to live. It harbored the dreams and hopes of generations. Jake was ready to embark on a new journey, and what he needed now was to garner support from those around him. for the role of the community was not only to stand beside him, but also to be a united, powerful force facing challenges together. From that moment, the fight for their right to live and be free began, where Jake was no longer a solitary figure but emerged as a leader, a guiding light for a unified community. Jake Thompson, a former soldier, found a peaceful haven after long days of fighting and battle, a place where his soul constantly yearned to plant flowers and raise dogs. His life seemed to have been reborn, as tranquil moments spent beneath trees among flowers and with his loyal dog painted a beautiful picture of relaxation. However, this simple life could not last long, as the Homeowners Association HOA began to loom like cold shadows, encroaching upon the space and privacy Jake had strived to build. When the first letters arrived, he could not sit still. A notice demanding he alter the fence design and relocate gardening tools was not merely a request. It felt more like an invasion of his private life, a violation of his liberties. The sensation that his freedom was being stifled sent Jake's mind reeling. From a man who had bravely faced bullets on the battlefield, he now found himself confronting an amorphous enemy that held power in its hands, the Homeowners Association. The increasing presence of the HOA made Jake feel as though he was living under constant surveillance. He was not alone in this sentiment. Many of his neighbors began to feel uneasy and disheartened by the strict regulations, probing inquiries, and unfamiliar threats imposed by the HOA. Rather than allowing these pressures to drown him in fear, Jake resolved to take action. Drawing on his military experience, he began to educate himself about his rights and the regulations enforced by the HOA. Not long afterward, upon returning from a business trip, Jake was shocked to discover a fence erected around his home. The pickets created a barrier isolating him from the free space he had painstakingly cultivated. A wave of isolation and melancholy surged within him, but this only fueled the fire of Jake's determination to fight. He could not accept living in an area where his privacy was violated to such an extent. Instead of enduring this alone, Jake sought support from his neighbors. He organized meetings to inform everyone about the HOA regulations and to share the concerns he and many other residents were facing. These meetings became not just a platform to question the HOA, but also an opportunity for people to come together, discuss and share their experiences. A community began to form, and Jake became the connecting force among them. As tensions with the HOA escalated, threatening messages and warning letters continued to be sent to residents. Jake stood firm. He was not only fighting to protect his own privacy, but he also aimed to safeguard the rights of the community he had been building alongside his neighbors. With each meeting, the strength and solidarity between him and his neighbors grew. They were no longer isolated individuals, but a united front against the pressures exerted by the HOA. But Jake did not want to limit himself to traditional meetings. To spread his message and attract attention from the wider community, he decided to organize a small protest in the area. One day, he broadcast his message across social media, capturing the interest of the local newspaper and community rights bloggers. The protest erupted, not only showcasing their opposition to the HOA's invasion, but also empowering the spirit of community solidarity. From that point onward, Jake's legal battle began. He collected evidence of the HOA's dubious actions, from vague regulations to opaque surveys. With support from his neighbors, he gained the strength and confidence to file a lawsuit against the HOA. The conflict had transformed from a personal struggle against an organization into a public battle, a fight for justice. After months of hardship, Jake's thirst for justice was finally satisfied. The court ruled in his favor, compelling the HOA to provide restitution and cease their illegal activities. The struggle seemed to have concluded, but what Jake achieved went beyond mere victory. He had reclaimed his ownership. But the most valuable outcome was establishing a garden of freedom, a symbol of the strength of solidarity. However, this was not just a tale of personal triumph. Later, Jake invited all his neighbors to participate in building this garden, creating not only a more beautiful living space, but also strengthening the relationships among residents. The days of anxiety and skepticism were replaced with laughter sharing and friendship. No longer were they merely distant neighbors. They had become companions in the journey toward building a better community. At a celebration commemorating Jake's return, the atmosphere was filled with joy and camaraderie. Past painful memories were recalled now, transformed into valuable lessons about unity and perseverance. Jake's story was not just a personal journey, but that of an entire community, one that rose against adversity and found positive ways to resolve their challenges. The success in Jake's battle with the HOA also brought about a transformation within the organization. Recognizing the positive response from the community, the HOA president decided to listen to residents' opinions. Regular meetings were held allowing everyone to contribute feedback on the regulations. The atmosphere of peace and cooperation gradually revived, turning the HOA into a positive force in the community. Over time, the Garden of Freedom became a symbol of community strength. Cultural and sporting events were regularly organized, bringing vibrancy to the neighborhood, and each community member felt proud of what they had built together. They were no longer fearful of unilateral power, but confidently united, believing they could overcome any challenge. Through these hardships, Jake not only found himself, but also discovered deeper meanings in life. Happiness was not something distant. Happiness was when he stood up for others, supported his community, and created a peaceful environment for everyone. The feelings of despair that once weighed him down were replaced by joy, love, and connection with those around him. This new life was not an easy beginning, but Jake and his community proved that with perseverance, unity, and love, any difficulty could be overcome. They created a beautiful living space, not only for themselves, but also for future generations. The protection of their home was not only a right, but also a responsibility, and everyone could contribute to building a better future. This story is not just a lesson about rights and responsibilities, but also a powerful message about humanity, that when we stand together, nothing can stand in our way. When Jake returned from an extended work trip, he eagerly anticipated stepping back into his small home, a place where he had poured his heart and soul into creating a peaceful and beautiful life. But to his astonishment, as he set foot on the property he called his sanctuary, his eyes were drawn to the white wooden boards erected in a manner that was both well-meaning and provocatively unsettling. The new fence surrounding his house, taller and sturdier than anything he had previously built, had entirely transformed the familiar space into a secluded area where he now felt uncomfortable, even wandering about. Jake's emotions were in turmoil. The war had stripped away many precious things from him, and now even the private space he had strived to cultivate had been turned into an unwanted quarantine zone. He wondered if this was part of a gradual process that the Homeowners Association HOA had surreptitiously established, aimed at controlling every aspect of life in the neighborhood. Rising anxiety and anger coursed through him. It felt as though he was caught in a battle, not just against the HOA, but for his very existence. Looking around, he could clearly sense the ambiguity in the HOA's behavior. The letters urging him to modify his living space not only made him feel invaded, but also sparked a lingering fear that they would not stop here. He reminisced about the peaceful days surrounded by blooming flowers and the simple dreams of a tranquil life. But now those dreams seemed like a wave being tossed about by stormy waters. As the HOA staff continuously appeared with notifications demanding changes, he recognized that they not only wanted to limit his space, but also sought to control how he lived and interacted with others. They acted as overseers, monitoring his every move, making him feel like a prisoner in his own home. The bond he had seemingly built with his neighbors was beginning to crack under the pressure from the HOA, yet Jake was not one to easily succumb. He resolved not to sit quietly and stew in his thoughts. He began to take action by seeking support from his neighbors. He knew that, if they didn't band together to protect their rights, the lives they had built would gradually be taken away. From casual afternoon tea gatherings, he started to hold regular meetings to share opinions, discuss the situation, and plot the next steps in confronting the HOA. Everything was far from easy, and the tension between Jake and the HOA steadily mounted over time. The constant barrage of warning letters was not merely bureaucratic communication. They felt like sharp knives piercing his mind, evoking a lingering anxiety about his right to live freely. There were moments when he felt exhausted and contemplated giving up, but the gaze of his neighbors rejuvenated his spirit. They were also under similar pressure, which fueled his determination to grow stronger. Life had turned into a battle, not only against the HOA, but also to help everyone understand they were not alone. They were not just people living near each other. They were a community bound by common rights and obligations. One afternoon, as he stepped outside, Jake caught sight of his neighbors gathering together discussing the current situation. Half-hearted smiles and nods of agreement indicated that everyone was beginning to grasp the gravity of the issue. They could not allow the HOA to dictate the future of their lives. "We need to stand up and protect our rights," Jake declared during one of the meetings. "What is happening here isn't just my problem. It concerns all of us. We have the right to live in a space where we decide how to care for and improve our surroundings." His words galvanized the group, igniting a sense of purpose within each attendee. They were hearing concerns that resonated with their own experiences, and above all, a shared desire for a better future for the neighborhood they all cherished. Together, they planned their next steps, from seeking legal assistance to meticulously investigating the HOA regulations. Laughter and solidarity fostered a renewed hope, a drive to keep fighting for the things they felt were their due. Jake was no longer alone, and with each passing day, the strength from the community overshadowed his worries. He was now fighting not just for himself, but for all his neighbors. While challenges remained, the message was clear. They could not give up. They would stand firm like sturdy willows weathering the storm. The fence that the HOA had constructed around Jake's house was no longer just a physical boundary. Instead, it had become a symbol of the divide between power and rights, oppression and freedom. Rather than accept the circumstances that had unfolded, Jake and his community pledged to transform this into a catalyst for unity and resilience. One evening, as the evening sun descended onto the ground, Jake felt a renewed sense of determination. He decided that in this situation it was not merely a struggle, but a necessity to bring about change. He understood that the warning letters were not the end, but rather the first stepping stones toward building a new life, one worthy of the dignity and love he had sacrificed years to attain. This journey was not easy, but with the support of the community under the starlit sky of their small neighborhood, Jake felt more steadfast than ever. He would not just protect his living space. He would recreate an environment of connection and peace for everyone. And through this, he hoped to impart a powerful message about the strength of solidarity. Jake Thompson, with the unyielding spirit of a veteran, could never acclimate to enduring oppression. The day he discovered the barrier separating him from the outside world upon returning from a work assignment, his heart felt as if it had been torn apart. This barrier was not just physical. It was a symbol of the solitude that the Homeowners Association HOA had enforced upon him. His emotions were overflowing, a mixture of anger and resentment. He decided that this situation could no longer continue. Looking around him, Jake realized that he was not the only one enduring the harshness imposed by the HOA. His neighbors, individuals he had never conversed with before, now hid their worries behind anxious glances. He knew they too were manipulated by unreasonable regulations and warning letters. From these thoughts, an idea suddenly flickered in his mind. Why not harness the power of the community to stand up against these injustices? Aware of the strength that comes from unity, Jake decided to organize a small meeting to encourage his neighbors to participate. He sent invitations to each household outlining the purpose and significance of the event. Although anxiety still lingered within him, he sensed support from those around him. "If we don't start somewhere, we will remain in darkness forever," he assured himself. The meeting was attended by a few residents from the neighborhood. The atmosphere was tense yet filled with hope. Jake stood up and spoke confidently. "We are individuals living in a community, and this community needs to be protected," he declared. His words resonated, releasing the anxieties buried in the heart of each person present. They began sharing the difficulties they faced, from the bizarre demands by the HOA to the pressure-filled threat letters they received. As they spoke, the realization grew that they were not alone in their suffering. During the conversation, various stories unfolded, ranging from modest dreams for a lush garden to concerns over how the HOA's decisions could impact their home values. A sense of empathy began to blossom, binding them together. They were all living under different roofs, but they were gradually laying the groundwork for an unofficial uprising. The courage within each individual began to rise, and Jake knew this was just the beginning of the fight. He decided to continue organizing meetings, possibly weekly, to encourage residents to collectively raise awareness about HOA regulations and to understand their rights. But he didn't stop there. He boldly proposed organizing a small protest in front of the HOA board, aiming to attract media attention and draw in the larger community. "If we don't take action, no one will know our story," he encouraged everyone. However, it wasn't long before the HOA noticed Jake's activities and decided to retaliate. They sent a flurry of warning letters playing on the residents' fears. These letters were filled with threats, cautioning them about violations, from the color of their fences to the arrangement of their garden decor. The more letters that were sent, the more determined Jake became. "They can threaten us, but we will not back down," he told his neighbors at a meeting, his eyes gleaming like fire. Tension within the community escalated, but something had changed. Instead of cowering, the neighbors began to engage more. They discussed various strategies and ideas to resist the HOA. A sense of solidarity was gradually forming. They were no longer merely neighbors living beside one another, but had now become a force. Jake decided it was the right time to move to the next step. He had a clear idea for a protest that would not only attract media attention but also demonstrate their strength. With a unified plan, Jake turned the tide against the threats challenging them and launched a fight for their rights and freedoms. On the day of the protest, the atmosphere in the neighborhood was filled with excitement. The entire community gathered holding handmade signs with messages such as, "We want a voice," and "Freedom for our gardens." The sunlight shone bright as they lined up, smiles and proud expressions illuminated their faces. Jake felt like a leader, but not just himself. It was an entire strong team. Local media journalists and bloggers arrived to cover the event, offering a platform for Jake and his neighbor's story to spread beyond their community. The images and messages from the protest made the HOA uneasy. They realized that their power was no longer an insurmountable force. Exposed to the public eye, the HOA's shady actions were now under threat. The warning letters and pressure they had attempted to disseminate had turned into evidence of their misdeeds. The change in the community's spirit grew even stronger after the protest. They were no longer fighting merely for their rights. They had ignited a belief that they could change everything. Subsequent meetings transformed from places of fear into workshops where people collaborated on how to improve quality of life, support one another, and foster love. Jake felt joy radiating in the space where faces no longer bore the gloom of before. Jake's struggle and that of the community was no longer simply about resistance. It had evolved into a journey of building resilience and unity. The situation developed into a battle that transcended the fight for ownership, extending into claiming their sovereignty over their way of life and their right to be heard within the community. Skepticism and fear gradually receded, leaving behind a fresh confidence. And Jake, a veteran, discovered a new purpose during the months of struggle, not just for himself, but for the entire community. He was no longer merely a fighter against the HOA. He had become a pioneer in this small but meaningful revolution, paving the way for a new chapter for everyone. Jake's life gradually became an unimaginable battle day after day. Letters from the Homeowners Association HOA poured in like an unending storm, sweeping away everything he had painstakingly built. Yet the awareness of injustice grew within him. Jake felt he could no longer stand idly by while his life was under threat. Instead, he resolved to take action, to fight, not only for himself, but for all the neighbors whose rights were being violated. Jake started a bold plan. He understood that only community unity could provide the strength needed to confront the pressures from the HOA. He decided to organize informational meetings where people could share experiences, knowledge, and collaboratively find solutions to the issues they faced. This idea was not merely a gathering. It was an opportunity to foster a spirit of solidarity and reclaim the voice of this small community. He began knocking on doors in the neighborhood, inviting his neighbors to participate. Initially, some people were skeptical, apprehensive that their involvement would draw more attention from the HOA, but Jake knew he needed to create a comfortable, friendly environment. He organized a small party with simple dishes, wine, and soothing music, making the atmosphere of the meeting more intimate and welcoming. The day of the meeting arrived. Sitting in a corner of the garden, Jake's neighbors showed up one by one, creating a warm yet anxious atmosphere. The sounds of chirping birds and the rustling of leaves in the breeze surrounded them, but each person carried heavy thoughts within. Jake saw the scrutinizing gazes filled with both worry and hope. He stood up gently yet firmly and began the conversation. "We have lived alongside each other for a long time. I know many of us have faced issues from the HOA, but today I want us to turn fear into strength. We are not alone, and we don't have to endure this." Jake's words resonated like a ringing bell, pulling everyone out of their silence. He spoke about what was happening, about their rights and the benefits of standing together. Gradually, the neighbors became more open, sharing their struggles with the HOA. They realized that it wasn't just Jake who was facing difficulties. Everyone present was grappling with the same pressures. The event transformed from a mere meeting into a symbol of unity. They decided that they would no longer accept imposed regulations without consultation and without their voices being heard. One neighbor, Lisa, a single mother, emotionally shared, "I have felt powerless for so long. Every letter from the HOA makes me feel like I have no right to decide for my own home." The people around her nodded, feeling part of something larger and more powerful. After the meeting, Jake could not sit idle in comfort. He contemplated how to bring the community's voice closer to those in power, and how to garner attention from people beyond their small neighborhood. He began researching how to organize a small protest to attract the local press bloggers and television producers interested in community rights. Jake understood that public opinion was a powerful tool that could bring about change. Jake got to work preparing for the protest. He began designing banners and flyers to promote the event. With help from those neighbors who stood in solidarity, they collaboratively created media materials, expressing their aspirations and love for their living environment. They wrote stories about lives being infringed, about the home, where they had built dreams and beautiful memories. The day of the protest arrived, and Jake stood before the crowd among his neighbors feeling a surge of strength. He held a large banner that read, "Our living rights cannot be infringed." Other neighbors joined him, creating a lively atmosphere that drew the attention of passers-by. They were no longer just individuals fighting for themselves. They had become a powerful force, a united community. The protest attracted attention from the local press, and media reporters began to arrive, interviewing residents, capturing their emotions and stories. Jake felt as if he had touched something greater than himself. From being a former soldier who had served the country, he had now become a spokesperson for a fight to reclaim rights for the community. Amid the chaos of the protest, Jake's mind drifted back to his home, the place where he had nurtured dreams, and he promised himself that he would not allow shadows to invade his life ever again. Each letter from the HOA, each incident that occurred, did not discourage him. On the contrary, it ignited within him an ever-burning fire to fight. In the days that followed, the court began accepting lawsuit filings from Jake and the neighbors. The legal battles would not be easy, but Jake felt comforted knowing he was not alone. He understood that the strength of the community was the most powerful weapon, and he would not hesitate to stand up for what was right. The visions of a future where they coexisted peacefully and happily began to take clearer shape in his mind. This struggle was not just his own. It had become a shared journey for the entire community. Finally, after many months of steadfast perseverance, as the court listened to the stories and evidence from Jake and the neighbors, a verdict was reached. The court decided in favor of the community, pointing out the HOA's overreach and ordering them to cease all threatening actions against the residents' rights. In that emotionally charged moment, Jake felt as though all the suffering and hardships they had endured were in some way vindicated. This was a new beginning, a hopeful journey for Jake and his community. Life not only returned to normal, but also gained a deeper, more profound meaning. They had triumphed not only in this battle, but also in every heart present. From the difficulties they faced, they had discovered strength through unity, and Jake was a testament to that. The legal battle between Jake and the Homeowners Association, HOA, is not just a personal challenge, but also reflects the struggles of countless others in the community. After months of enduring pressure and harassment from the HOA, Jake remained resolute, refusing to back down. He understood that silence and acceptance would only facilitate the continuation of power abuse. Instead of withdrawing, he stood up, not only for himself, but also for the rights of his neighbors who had once been isolated in their own suffering. As the lawsuit was drafted, emotions of excitement and hope mingled with anxiety and haunting memories of past battlegrounds. Jake had never imagined that he would have to face another fight. But now, he found himself at the center of a new struggle, a battle not marked by bloodshed, but filled with significance. He decided to call a lawyer, a specialist in community rights. Jake's lawyer, a woman named Emily, deeply empathized with his situation. She had witnessed many similar cases affecting other residents, and was well aware of the dark sides of organizations like the HOA. They are not the ultimate authority, she told Jake. Her words ignited a resilient fire within him. Emily was the motivation he needed, helping him see that the power of the HOA did not stem from legality, but from the fear and ignorance of the residents. During the preparation for the lawsuit, Jake reached out to several neighbors he had attempted to connect with. He shared his story and warned them about the strict regulations imposed by the HOA. Together, they gathered evidence, photographs, letters, and documents from the HOA. Jake was not only restoring his personal rights, but also assisting oppressed neighbors. They all began to realize that they were not alone, and that they had strength when standing together. After months of tension, the day of the court hearing finally arrived. A chilling atmosphere of anxiety enveloped the situation, but Jake was well prepared for this moment. In court, he could feel his heart pounding. As he stepped into the courtroom, he saw the familiar faces of his neighbors, those who had stood by him during his most difficult times. Emily delivered an outstanding argument against the HOA's wrongful actions. She pointed out that the board was not only violating privacy rights, but also infringing on the fundamental freedoms of the residents in the area. Most of their regulations were mere disguises for unnecessary control. The strong arguments and clear evidence she presented left the jury with no doubt about the legitimacy of the lawsuit. The most pivotal moment came when Jake stood up to present his evidence. He expressed sincere emotions about what the HOA had taken from his life and its impact on the living spaces of the community. He also brought along a notebook capturing his feelings about days spent planting flowers and caring for his beloved dog. "For me, this is not just a house," he said. "This is where I find peace and happiness, where I can live and love." In the subsequent hearing, support from the community grew stronger. Letters expressing solidarity signed by other residents were sent to both the court and the HOA, echoing the theme of living free that Jake was fighting for. They understood that this was not just a fight for themselves, but a battle for justice and collective rights. Many organizations and activists concerned with residents' rights also began to take notice of Jake's lawsuit. They started to speak out, featuring Jake's story in articles and television programs, thereby generating a powerful wave of awareness about the rights they deserved. The legal battle morphed into a broader struggle for residents' rights, with Jake emerging as a symbol of resilience and courage. From his initial feelings of isolation, he transformed into a community leader. His perseverance, combined with the love and support from his neighbors, compelled the unjust powers to reconsider. The emergence of the community put pressure on the HOA. When the court issued its ruling, the courtroom erupted with joy. The final decision favored Jake, forcing the HOA to cease its unlawful activities and provide restitution. This victory was not just for Jake, it was a triumph for all who had endured oppression and injustice. This win restored faith in the relationship between residents and management organizations. Jake not only reclaimed what was rightfully his, but also created a garden of freedom. A place where every resident could come together, share the joys of life, and enjoy a sense of safety and understanding. No longer was there conflict, only collaboration and a stronger sense of connection than ever before. Laughter, greetings, and warm feelings revived joy and meaning in the community. They reached out to one another to build a living space not only for themselves, but for future generations. Jake became an indispensable part of their lives, and they found happiness in moving forward together, preserving the best values they had built. This was not just a battle for a house, but a grand lesson in perseverance, unity, and the value of friendship. Jake was not only a veteran seeking peace, but a hero of the community, a person who proved that when everyone stands on one side, nothing is insurmountable. Their lives were no longer as they once were. They had become richer and happier than ever, serving as a testament to the power of solidarity and humanity. Jake Thompson stood in the pristine garden of his own, making gazing at the buds beginning to bloom like the radiant golden hair of children playing in the sunlight. After months of battling the Homeowners Association HOA, he now felt as if he were living in a dream of freedom and connection. When the news came that the court had sided with him, he could hardly believe it. A wave of relief and pride flooded his heart, but deep down he understood that he could not create change alone. It was thanks to the support of his neighbors, people he had never imagined would stand beside him in the fight against the HOA. While not everyone shared the same opinions on gardening techniques or music for the party, one thing was clear. They all wanted to preserve their living space, a place where people could freely express themselves. Inspired by this victory, Jake decided to invite all his neighbors for a gathering in the garden. He wanted not only to celebrate the win, but also to build stronger relationships within this community. Through the struggles, courage and perseverance had brought him to this point, and now was the time to rekindle these bonds. On the day of the event, the weather was sunny and brilliant rays danced on every leaf, turning the garden into an enchanting space. Jake personally prepared simple yet meaningful dishes, from cookies to fresh garden salads. The flavors and atmosphere of the day were rich with affection and connection. As the neighbors began to arrive, Jake sensed the excitement and joy in the air. They brought food, drinks, and stories to share, creating an environment filled with laughter and chatter. Gone were the tense debates over HOA matters. Instead, there were tales of everyday life, children, and even the small dreams they had always wished to pursue. In one corner of the garden, a spot that had once been a hot spot for confrontation was now transformed into a place where everyone came together to plant. Jake led the group, showing them how to plant each type of flower and bush. They discussed which flowers would look best and exchanged gardening tips. This atmosphere was a stark contrast to the legal battles of the past. As the celebration drew to a close, Jake had prepared a short speech. In the beaming gaze of his neighbors, he stood up, emotions swelling. "I want to thank each of you for standing by me during these challenging months," he began. "It's not only because we triumphed, but also for the support, friendship, and solidarity we have built together. We have proven that when we stand together, nothing can defeat us." Applause erupted, cheers rang across the sky. Eyes gleamed with hope and unity. They raised their glasses and toasted to the bright future of their community. In that moment, Jake realized that their strength lay not only in their ability to fight, but also in their commitment to build and create a true living space. As time passed, regular meetings with the HOA became an integral part of community life. Jake and his neighbors engaged in discussions about regulations rather than waiting passively for directives from above. They became active managers of their area, voicing their opinions, concerns, and aspirations. In doing so, they transformed from individuals into a powerful collective. The laughter, smiles, and heartfelt exchanges helped Jake and his neighbors forge relationships far more enduring than he could have ever imagined. They were no longer just people living next to each other. They had become a big family where everyone supported one another in life. In addition to caring for the garden, they began organizing cultural and sports activities which strengthened their sense of solidarity and created unforgettable experiences. Outdoor movie nights, fairs, and viewing parties brought them closer, enriching their communal life. For Jake, this transformation not only brought joy to daily life, but also became a journey of self-discovery. He realized that supporting each other within the community was one of the best ways to find happiness. Traversing through the flames of conflict came valuable lessons about the power of unity and friendship. Jake's heart was now wider open than ever before. He had not only regained his life, but had also found a real family. The community was not merely a collection of neighbors. They were friends, companions in life. They shared difficult moments together, rejoiced in happiness, and collectively created a living space worth being proud of. Everything began to change through harmony and sharing. No more battles, no more warning letters. Instead, they found common ground, bringing them a better life. Jake no longer felt lonely. He now knew that true friends surrounded him, companions with whom he could journey through life. Every moment spent in the Garden of Freedom was filled with meaning. Working together, nurturing the blooming flowers, all brought them a sense of peace and happiness. The hugs, the joyful laughter became indelible memories in everyone's lives. As the celebration concluded, Jake sat alone in the garden, gazing at the starry sky. His soul felt light and serene, like a tranquil river. He knew that it was love and unity that created the beautiful values in their lives. They had overcome all challenges, and now they were creating cherished memories in every moment, every day spent together. The story of Jake and his community was not merely about a fight against HOA regulations. It was a journey in search of the true values in life, the values of friendship, mutual support, and the strength of solidarity. It was these very elements that helped them not only overcome difficulties, but also build a precious home for the entire community. They demonstrated that no matter the battles they faced, humanity, kindness, and connection would always be the keys to creating a beautiful life. Life doesn't always unfold as planned, and things seem to become more complicated when challenges arise. In the context of Jake confronting control from the Homeowners Association, HOA, his story has become a vivid testament to the power of solidarity and community. When people stand together against injustice, they not only protect their individual rights, but also create a more beautiful living environment for everyone. When the HOA first emerged in Jake's life, he felt his privacy was being invaded. Requests to alter fences and relocate garden tools appeared to be just the beginning of an unofficial war. Contrary to his expectations, Jake was not alone in this battle. Many neighbors also recognized the HOA's harassment and began to feel frustrated. One afternoon, when Jake decided to organize a meeting with his neighbors, he anticipated that this would draw attention from those eager to defend their rights. This meeting was not just an event, it transformed into a historic gathering. Neighbors began sharing their experiences, anxieties and passions about their living space. They spoke of the joy in welcoming friends, a love for gardening, and the desire to live in a peaceful environment. Gradually, in that warm atmosphere, solidarity blossomed. The stories, laughter, and even tears, as they recounted the simple moments of life, forged a connecting thread. This was not merely a battle against the HOA, it was a struggle for friendship, for bonds that they had not previously acknowledged. After these meetings, Jake realized that it was not only him, but the entire community that had been awakened. Each person discovered their own voice. They began writing letters, sharing information, and even organizing a small protest in the area. This event garnered attention from the media and inspired others. They began to understand that they could effect change if they stood together, and this realization brought them hope. Challenges are an inevitable part of life, but they recognize that when they stand firm together, they can overcome any obstacle. The regular meetings became a forum for opinions and thoughts. Previously silent voices courageously spoke out. They exchanged ideas about HOA regulations, what should be changed and what needed to be preserved. Gradually, this sense of unity made the HOA reconsider its actions. The HOA president, recognizing that his decisions were no longer merely formal rules but had real consequences, decided to open the door for community input. This was a pivotal moment in which power began to listen to the needs of those it represented. Organizing regular meetings not only allowed residents to express their views, but also helped build a stronger community. This change benefited not only Jake and his neighbors, but also inspired other communities. They saw that through solidarity and standing together, what seemed impossible could become a reality. Jake's community became a model for many other areas where residents peacefully stood against injustices. Looking back, Jake not only saw the sunlight shining on the Garden of Freedom, but also the strong bonds that had formed joy, and friendliness had become an essential part of their daily lives. They increasingly planted not just flowers, but also values of friendship, unity, and trust in one another. From the initial difficulties, they had built a more beautiful environment where everyone could take pride in their home. Ultimately, Jake's story is not just a battle against the HOA, but a testament to the power of friendship and community. They learned that overcoming difficulties through unity not only creates change, but also strengthens them. With each meeting and celebration, they built cherished memories not only for themselves, but for future generations. Jake's journey from a passive individual to a community leader delivers a powerful message in life. No one is alone if surrounded by others. They realize that mutual support is the most important part of building a meaningful life. Jake's story will forever serve as a lesson in courage, perseverance, and the strength of humanity, reminding us all that the most valuable things in life can never be measured in material terms. It is truly delightful to witness the remarkable transformation that has emerged from the challenges faced by the community. After Jake and his neighbors valiantly fought against the oppression of the Homeowners Association HOA, they have shown that when people stand together they can make a difference. And that is precisely what HOA President Karen has come to realize. Karen is a strong woman, yet she has always felt pressure from the rigidly minded HOA members who held conservative viewpoints. Facing rising tensions and dissatisfaction from the community, she realized that the strict rules enforced by the HOA were no longer appropriate. She had once believed that the HOA was the only way to maintain order and beauty in the neighborhood, but now she understood that collaboration and listening to residents' voices were truly the keys to creating a better living environment. With this newfound perspective, Karen decided to hold an open meeting that weekend to invite all residents to participate. This was not merely an event to announce new regulations, but an opportunity for everyone to express their opinions and contribute to the development of a friendly and collaborative HOA. She knew this was a decisive step that could lead to change for the entire community. At the meeting, the atmosphere was somewhat tense. Residents who had previously endured harsh management and felt unheard now had the chance to voice their concerns and desires. Jake, drawing on his experience from past struggles, became the leader of the discussion. He encouraged everyone to share their thoughts openly and honestly. We are not just individuals living in the same neighborhood. We are a community, and we need to make this community better, Jake said with resolute determination. His words resonated with many of those present at the meeting. Residents took turns presenting ideas and suggestions ranging from organizing cultural events to revamping public spaces. A young woman proposed that they hold an annual community bonding day where everyone could gather and share joy. An older man expressed his desire to improve green areas by planting more trees and flowers to enhance the neighborhood's aesthetic value. After listening to all the opinions, Karen felt deeply moved. She realized that residents not only wanted to live in a beautiful and peaceful area, but they also longed for a space where they could connect, interact, and collaborate with one another. This was in stark contrast to the criteria imposed by the HOA previously. The meeting concluded with a spirit of enthusiasm and hope. Karen committed to taking the residents' proposals seriously and sought the best ways to manage and govern the area in a more positive direction. She also promised to hold regular meetings so that all community members would have a chance to participate in the governance. From that point on, the HOA gradually transformed from a rigid organization that clung to strict rules into a more proactive force in community building. The regular meetings allowed people to engage directly in the decision-making process and feel that their opinions truly mattered. In the following months, the atmosphere in the neighborhood became more friendly. Residents began to feel more connected to one another. They organized events such as flower festivals, picnic afternoons, and sports activities, all aimed at enhancing community spirit. New ideas continually emerged, from creating a dedicated social media page for the neighborhood to share information and concepts to forming volunteer groups to support families in need. Jake and his neighbors realized that by actively participating in the change process, they had been able to rebuild relationships and restore joy in their daily lives. This transformation stemmed not only from better communication but also from everyone coming together to think about common benefits. Together with Karen and other HOA members, Jake keenly felt that unity and mutual support could bring about positive and enduring impacts. As they collaboratively contributed ideas and established reasonable rules for the entire community, everything became more achievable. A peaceful atmosphere returned to the neighborhood, with smiles, laughter, and lively conversations replacing the previously tense environment. In addition to building the Freedom Garden, the community also developed a sense of responsibility for their living environment as a tribute to what they had experienced and the outcomes they had achieved. The lessons learned from the battle with the HOA became motivation for everyone in the community. They understood that fighting for their rights could only succeed when people were united. As a result, they had not only built a better living environment, but had also laid the groundwork for sustainable development in the future. The laughter, joy, and solidarity they had cultivated were not just a product of the legal struggle, but a promise for future generations. They realized that no struggle is in vain if it leads to understanding and support for one another. And at the root of it all, it was love, respect, and relentless effort that made this miracle happen. When Jake's battle with the HOA and the surrounding community ended in a spectacular victory, it brought not only recognition of ownership, but also created lasting impacts for the entire area. The Freedom Garden, once a symbol of resistance and struggle, now transformed into a communal space where residents gathered, interacted, and shared beautiful memories. The garden was not merely a place for blooming flowers. It was also a unifying space dissolving previous conflicts. The days spent together planting, watering, and nurturing each flower did not only beautify the living environment but also healed the fractures in neighborly relationships. They began to realize that they did not just coexist in a neighborhood. They shared the same dream and vision for a brighter life. The community was no longer a collection of isolated individuals, but gradually became one large family. Barbecues, music festivals, and sporting events helped everyone relieve stress and foster solid connections. People began to understand one another, better listen to each other's stories, and find meaningful bonds in what seemed to be trivialities. The Freedom Garden was now bursting with color and life. Flowers blossomed, exuding a gentle fragrance that captivated everyone's gaze. Children ran and laughed in this peaceful space, while adults chatted about gardening and intriguing aspects of life. The spirit of solidarity elevated not just the community but also created a rich environment for everyone. Not content with merely beautifying the garden, Jake and his neighbors decided to transform the place into a cultural hub. Artistic performances, gardening workshops, and regular sports events were organized, allowing people to not only enjoy but also actively partake in the community's growth. These were not just recreational activities. They provided opportunities to build and reinforce relationships, fostering closer bonds between residents. All these efforts ushered Jake's community into a new phase of development. The Freedom Garden became a symbol of the strength of unity, where individuals learned and shared experiences together. The youth of the area also engaged in activities inspiring one another to work towards a better future. They recognized the value of collaboration, mutual support, and an unwavering commitment to their dreams. Currently, Jake was no longer merely a veteran returned from war. He had evolved into a leader, a motivating force for his community. He inspired younger generations and those around him, not only with his personal stories, but also through actions and an unyielding spirit of persistence. He taught everyone that life requires commitments and tireless dedication, facing both pain and success head-on. Through his efforts to turn the Freedom Garden into a vibrant and creative space, Jake opened a new chapter for the entire community. People now knew how to stand by each other to overcome challenges, support one another in times of need, and lead lives full of meaning. The garden was not just a physical structure. It was also a precious spiritual entity filled with memories, emotions, and noble aspirations. Looking out at the garden, Jake felt an indescribable happiness. He realized that all his efforts were not only for ownership, but also for the peace and happiness of the community. He had transformed from a soldier simply wanting to escape into a private space to a symbol of love's strength and the relentless spirit of fighting for a better tomorrow. The positive change within the HOA was an essential part of this narrative. The dialogue between the HOA and the community facilitated greater understanding and discovered more effective ways to collaborate. The HOA president, after witnessing the power of unity from the residents, recognized that management was not just a responsibility, but also a duty and privilege of each community member. Regular meetings became not merely a requirement, but a platform for residents to discuss, contribute ideas, and collectively establish rules fairly and rationally. This area continued to develop not only physically, but also spiritually. Other model communities began to take notice of what was happening here, sparking a positive wave throughout the city. Experience sharing activities and workshops on how to build sustainable communities together were organized, creating a vast network of those passionate about change. Ultimately, the Freedom Garden was not just a place for flowers. It had become a symbol of the power of unity, a testament to what a cohesive community could achieve in overcoming challenges and building a brighter future. Jake and his neighbors proved that with perseverance, love, and care for one another, nothing was impossible. Every challenge could transform into an opportunity for growth, establishing a better community for everyone. The Freedom Garden is not merely a patch of land for planting flowers and trees. It has become a symbol of hope, unity, and the desire to preserve the beautiful values in the community that Jake and his neighbors have built together. Through the arduous days, from the months of oppression by the HOA to the reclaiming of their living space, the garden has witnessed heartwarming stories of humanity, sharing, and courage. Increasingly, the Freedom Garden has gained recognition beyond the confines of the neighborhood, spreading throughout the entire city. From locals to tourists, everyone comes to discover a lush and beautiful green space where people feel comfortable, peaceful, and close to nature. The refurbished wooden benches and artistically laid gravel paths have begun to emerge as the ideal destination for picnics, community gatherings, and vibrant little festivals. Each flower in the garden carries its own story and meaning. The roses symbolize love and hope, while the carnations represent gratitude and appreciation. Jake and his group of neighbors have tirelessly worked to nurture the garden, making it ever more vibrant. Not just to beautify their living space, but also to remind everyone of what they have gone through together. Each time they see a flower bloom, they not only rejoice in its natural beauty, but also feel the strength of resilience and unity. The garden has also become a venue for exciting and beneficial activities for the community. Workshops on gardening, tree planting, and environmental protection are held regularly, attracting a significant turnout of residents. This not only enhances people's knowledge, but also provides an opportunity for them to meet, converse, and connect with one another. The younger residents of the neighborhood have begun to take on leadership roles. They are not only learning from the elders, but also contributing fresh ideas to enrich the community's cultural and sporting life. Music performances, sports competitions, and cultural events have attracted not only local residents, but also visitors from afar. Jake witnesses this growth with a heart full of emotion and pride, knowing that all of this stems from the relentless efforts of himself and his neighbors. Not content merely with creating a garden, Jake aspires to foster an environment where people can inspire one another. He frequently invites speakers to share their stories, the valuable life lessons they have learned. The talks, ranging from mental health maintenance to lessons on resilience and rebirth after hardship, have provided many with a new perspective on life. In Jake's eyes, the garden is not only a space he has dedicated himself to creating, but also a precious legacy he wishes to leave for future generations. He envisions children running amidst the trees, young people standing together by the flower beds, and the elderly nodding in approval on the benches, all contributing to a vibrant picture of a civilized and united community. After each event, every laugh and every tear of joy serve as testament to what the garden has brought forth. Jake cannot help but imagine a day when the garden will become a place not only for them, but also a destination for those seeking peace and connection in their busy lives. Nature lovers and those in search of serene moments for their souls will flock here, and the preservation of this green space has become the collective responsibility of everyone in the community. As he enjoys moments of relaxation under the shade of the trees, Jake feels as though he has truly overcome all the pains of the past. He finds true happiness not only in caring for the garden, but also in building a strong community. He has created a place where people not only coexist, but also love and support one another. Ultimately, the garden is not just a living space. It is also a model of what a community can achieve when they stand together to protect their rights. Jake draws lessons from his own struggle and embodies a grand ideal. He understands that nothing is impossible if we strive together. Barriers and challenges become stepping stones that bring people closer, stronger, and more united. The Freedom Garden has become a legacy, a vibrant testament to the power of unity. It reminds everyone that life can be more beautiful, as long as they are willing to collaborate, listen, and learn from one another. Nothing can hinder the power of love and hope that humanity can create when they join forces to overcome difficulties. The story of Jake and the Freedom Garden is not merely a battle with the HOA. It is also a journey of self-discovery, exploring strength and the zest for life alongside others. Ultimately, what Jake and the community have found is not just ownership, but humanity connection and a brighter future for each of them. The most important lesson they learned is that solidarity will help them overcome all barriers, and that is the most beautiful gift that life has to offer. The Freedom Garden is not merely a plot of land adorned with vibrant flower beds and lush green trees. It has become a symbol of the community's strength in unity. The challenges that Jake and his neighbors have faced have taught them that true power does not stem from authority or harsh regulations, but from love and mutual support. The first change occurred right after the court decided in favor of Jake. The garden itself has now transformed into a warm sanctuary, a place where people can gather, share stories, and work together. Recreational activities, festivals, and small competitions are held regularly, bringing not only joy, but also forging bonds of friendship and solidarity. The Freedom Garden has created a lively living space where everyone contributes ideas and effort to enhance the quality of daily life. Each morning, as sunlight filters through the leaves, the community gathers to care for the plants, till the soil and plant flowers. They work not only to beautify the garden, but also to reconnect with themselves and each other. Jake, as the catalyst for these activities, has begun to feel the excitement radiating from those around him. He realizes that each smile, each laugh that echoes in that space brings him a surge of positive energy. He has overcome the loneliness and mental scars he carried from his time in the military. Introducing everyone to the art of planting flowers, he shares his passion for creating green spaces, along with the significance of every blossom. In addition to gardening, Jake organizes impromptu classes to help people improve their urban agriculture skills. From caring for plants and watering them to making organic fertilizer and advising on sustainable practices, Jake has become a guiding light for the community. This knowledge not only helps them secure clean food, but also fosters a healthier environment. Cultural and sporting events held at the Freedom Garden further promote the spirit of unity within the community. Engaging workshops on local culture, art classes, and sports exchanges are continuously taking place, enabling everyone to grow closer and understand each other better. Jake recognizes that not only do the flowers bloom, but the relationships flourish in an atmosphere of unity and cooperation. The outdoor barbecues, where everyone enjoys dishes prepared by community members, create a sense of belonging, akin to that of a large family. They cheer for sports matches, share laughter over past stories, and forge unforgettable memories. The photographs captured not only document memorable moments, but also create a cultural legacy for future generations. Jake has also become a mentor not only in gardening, but in self-discovery. He encourages people to share their own stories, experiences, and the difficulties they've faced. Through these conversations, the sharing becomes a source of inspiration for many, helping them to overcome daily anxieties. The Freedom Garden has truly become an inspiration for those seeking a meaningful life where love and sharing are the core values. It exists not only as a physical piece of land, but as a vibrant soul of the community, a place where everyone can find meaning and connection across generations. With the development of the garden, Jake has not only rejuvenated a living space for himself, but also stands as a prime example of the power of solidarity. He understands that in life, not everyone can overcome challenges alone. The community exists to support one another, helping each other stand firm against life's storms. Jake's story is not just a personal journey, but also a community journey. This story has inspired many other areas where individuals like Jake have risen to defend their rights and build happier communities. The Freedom Garden became a beacon illuminating the path toward a brighter future, where everyone can live harmoniously, joyfully, and freely together. In an increasingly fragmented world filled with challenges, Jake and his community have proven that love and unity are not only important values, but also an infinite strength that can transform lives. They have established a legacy not just for themselves, but for future generations, reminding them of the power of camaraderie and human connection. Ultimately, the garden is not only a place to grow flowers, but also a nurturing ground for dreams, fostering relationships, and creating precious memories. Jake and his community have preserved and cultivated these values, bringing them a bright and hopeful future, a living space not just for the present but for generations to come.